Hi, Anita. It's great meeting you. Thank you so much for taking the time out to chat with me. For our audience, could you please give a brief introduction about what you do?
Sure. My name is Anita D'Amico, and I work at Synopsys, where I am the Vice President of Cross Portfolio Solutions and Strategy. Synopsys is a big cyber company. It is semiconductor chip designs, and they also have a business unit where I work in software integrity. And my job is to help our customers solve really big problems with solutions that combine our services and our products. And for example, one of those areas would be software supply chain risk management.
Great. And what is your formal background?
I have a very different background than most other people in this industry. I actually have a PhD in experimental psychology.
Nice.
And there are very few people in this field who have that kind of background, but I've felt that it has really helped me grow in this field.
Great. I always love hearing stories from people who come from different backgrounds because that brings a lot of different perspectives into the problems that we're solving. So thank you so much for sharing that. One of the first things that I want to ask you today is there are a lot of security conferences. Why BSidesNYC? And what have you been most excited about today?
Well, I love B-Sides conferences, and I like them because they're grassroots.
Okay.
You get to meet people who are just starting out in a field. You get to meet people who are in the middle of it, people who are closer to the end of their career. And so you have all different kinds of perspectives. So I really like that. I particularly was looking forward to the B-Sides NYC because it's New York City. And while I live in the metro area, one of the wonderful things about New York City, aside from the fact that it's close to my home, is that there's just a diversity of people. And there are so many people who are involved in different aspects of security. So I was looking forward to that as well. And I was so pleased to be invited to speak here. And then when I looked at the program, I said, oh, there's a bunch of things that I want to attend myself.
Yes. And what are those things that what do you think you'll be getting the most value out of today?
So I like to go to things that I may not be an expert in or even may not be something that's directly relevant, but I want to see it. So one of the things I found that was really interesting was the FBI outreach program.
Okay.
I really enjoyed that presentation. It was an introduction to the FBI and how they do outreach to citizens. And I'm going to tell people about the program. I also saw some interesting things on cyber threat intelligence. And I'm looking forward to the presentations on SBOM, which is near and dear to my heart, and also to metrics. I am very interested in how people measure the success of security or failure and how they represent that to their management. Because I really believe that security is essential, but that you have to convince other people in the management chain of that fact. And so unless you actually meet them where they are and represent risk to them in a way that they can understand it, you're not going to be able to really move your security program forward. So I'm looking forward to that metrics presentation.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And I think you hit some of my passion project areas as well. So for example, I love talking about metrics because, to your point, it is difficult to measure the value and articulate it so that everybody sees security as something that's essential for businesses to thrive. And metrics is one way to achieve that. So I completely get that.
I think it's not just the metrics.
Yeah.
It's also how you present it.
Yes.
So my background is in psychology. And the way I first got involved in cybersecurity was through visualization. How do you represent a lot of network activity visually in a way that people will understand that there is a potential malicious pattern? there. And people are very visual. And so I'm interested both in the measurement and then how that measurement is expressed to people in a visual form or narrative form so that they will immediately grasp it.
Yes, absolutely, because in the end, it's really about communicating across a wide range of functions and bringing everybody together to move forward.
Right.
So I completely agree that, communicating that, presenting that in a way that's digestible is critical. So
Digestible is a good word.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So thank you for that. You are speaking yourself, and you have a very exciting talk coming up as well. And I particularly wanted to understand what you'd be talking there. And for most folks, people think supply chain security is like part of application security. Part of it is true, but I don't think that represents the complete picture. What are the commonalities and where do they differ? Can you share your expert opinion?
Sure. So software supply chain and the securing of the software supply chain is something that starts all the way on the left during the design phase, the architecture, the threat modeling, and goes through the software development phase, which is where application security mostly resides. So through all the software development, the proprietary code, using open source, bringing third-party components in, putting things through the development pipeline, all that is application security. And then you get release. You release the software.
Correct.
So we're still in the supply chain. The supply chain continues after that. When you release the software, now part of software supply chain risk management is to include a software bill of materials. That software bill of materials gets handed off to a number of people, and they are involved in the supply chain. There's the IT operators. Well, they have to deploy the software. So the deployment environment is part of the supply chain. There are the people who patch it and update the software. That is part of the supply chain. There are the people who are looking at risks to the supply chain, such as the legal people who are looking to see if there are license violations. That is part of the supply chain. And then there is the people that you deliver it to. And the people who deliver it, that receive it from you, are actually part of the supply chain as well. So application security, traditional application security, is, I would say, the first third to half of the software supply chain risk management process. But there's a lot more beyond that.
Yes, I think you articulated that really well. So it's like a small subcomponent, the application security, but then supply chain security has so much more to it. Can you talk a bit more about how people who are consuming the software themselves are part of the supply chain? I think that's a very interesting point that I had not thought of before.
Right. Well, actually, the big interest in software supply chain security is coming from the people who consume the software. And one of those is the United States government.
Okay.
The United States government is one of the biggest software consumers in the world, and certainly one of the big purchasing areas for software. And they were taken aback by SolarWinds, which affected a lot of networks, including government networks, by other certain types of attacks like CodeCov and NotPetya. They saw all that and they said, you know what, we have buying power, and we need to be able to look at our software that we're receiving and know that it was developed in a secure way.
Got it.
So what the government is doing, and now regulated industries like automotive, medical devices, they're doing the same thing. What they're doing is they're saying to the software suppliers, it's not enough that you just develop this software in a secure manner. You need to attest to it. You need to prove to us that is the case, because the receiver, the procurer of the software is actually inheriting the risk.
That's true. Which is why we have an entire field, right, of third-party risk management as well.
Right.
And I think, to your point, these new requirements, they're sort of elevating the assurance levels that are needed. And I think that's a good thing for the industry.
It is.
Yes.
I think it really is. It is just ensuring that the good practices that we know you're supposed to follow, you're actually following.
Great, great. Thank you so much for that. a lot of our viewers come from different backgrounds, and you briefly mentioned that you have a doctoral degree in psychology, in experimental psychology. How are you using it now? Like, how is it still relevant? You spoke about communicating. What other aspects of what you learned are you applying right now in your day-to-day role?
Mhm. Well, my background in experimental psychology has prepared me in many ways for what I do. One important part, as I described, is to understand how people perceive information. And when they perceive information in a certain way, they'll either absorb it or they won't.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm very interested in representing risk. In the case of software supply chain, how do you measure risk, and then how do you communicate that to people? So that's one area of psychology. One of the other areas that I have used over and over again from my experimental psychology background is that in experimental psychology, there's a very systematic methodology for how to study human behavior. People are by nature variable. People
Okay.
will do something different
Absolutely.
just to be different. They don't conform to rules like in biology or chemistry or physics in the physical world. And so psychologists have to have methodologies to study variability and be comfortable with variability. You know, you're not going to get the same answer every time when you're dealing with human beings. And so that has really equipped me for being able in security to understand that there aren't always hard and fast rules, and that the attackers are going to be variable.
Absolutely.
And so we really have to be agile as well. So those are just a couple of the areas.
That's very nice. That's very well put. I think it's so relevant because, to your point, the adversaries don't conform also. They're
Mhm.
also human beings, and they provide a lot of uncertainty. And being able to meet or like rise up to that challenge itself is some kind of training that perhaps a lot of people are not accustomed to. And you having that background really helps you there. So
Mhm.
I think that's amazing.
Mhm.
And with that, I'd like to really thank you for your time. It was great chatting with you. I am so excited for your talk. It'll be amazing. So thank you so much once again.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.